Today we've got a very special shoe to look at. Yes, I'm giving you my first impressions of this, the Nike Air Zoom Alphafly Next Percent. Could this be the world's best racing shoe? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh and here we talk all about running and triathlon, whether those be vlogs, training tip videos or shoe reviews just like today. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Yes, today I'll be giving you my first impressions review of what many people regard as the best running racing shoe, and that is this one in my hand here, the Nike Air Zoom Alphafly Next Percent. That's a mouthful. Just going to call it the Alphafly from now on. We'll go through the basics of this shoe, some of the stats. I'll tell you how much I've run it to give you my first impressions review, and then we'll talk about the upper, the midsole and the outsole to give you guys my initial impressions. So just a quick overview of the shoe first. In my men's UK size 9, this comes in at 210 grams with a stack height of 39 millimeters in the heel and 35 in the front, giving us a 4 millimeter drop if my maths is correct. Compared to some other shoes, that's actually not too aggressive, much less than the Vaporfly and the Adidas Adios Pros. And I think that is quite noticeable, which we'll talk about more when we talk about the midsole of this shoe. So far, I've run 40k in this shoe. That was 2 workouts and 1 half marathon race. So each workout was kind of between 8 and 10 kilometers, I think, and then obviously 21 kilometers for that half marathon. I've taken it through a range of paces with some recoveries between some intervals, a light warm up and a light cool down, some threshold intervals, some tempo work, and of course half marathon pace work in that race. So I think it's a pretty good initial set of runs to give you my opinion on this shoe. So let's dive in straight with my review and let's start with the upper. Now this is Nike's new kind of knit upper. This is atom knit, whereas previously it was fly knit. And I run in a number of fly knit shoes, most notably the Infinity React. Those were excellent. My review up in the corner. I really liked the upper in those. It gave me the right amount of support for an easy day shoe, but I haven't always been sold on knit uppers for those really fast-paced racing shoes. However, I must say this one really changed my mind. It's a significantly coarser material than other knit materials. I think that lends itself to giving it a lot more structure while still being really light and really breathable. The actual knit, the weave, is more plasticky than fabric compared to some other weaves. And I think that allows them to make slightly larger gaps between each one. Now yes, that does make it a slightly coarser knit in my opinion, especially on the medial side of the shoe. However, it really does create a great feel. It is super snug to the foot. There's not a lot of wiggle room in my size and the fit was absolutely perfect. The fact that they've used a slightly thicker thread also means that their air gaps, especially in the toe box, are significantly larger. So when I was running my half marathon, it was pretty hot, I think around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius, and I could feel the wind blowing between my toes, and that was really nice to kind of keep the feet cool and comfortable over longer distances. I was also really surprised to find some extra padding in the tongue. There's not a lot of people talk about this and you can't really tell from those photos on the Nike website. Most of the tongue is a very similar material to the rest of the shoe, the atom knit, but right at the top here, there's a little bit of extra padding, and I don't know how they've kind of put that in there. That's definitely more fabric-y than the rest of this plastic mesh. But that's really nice. Right at the top, where you're going to be kind of tying those laces off, it really helps just to mitigate any pressure, although I don't necessarily feel like I would have that in this shoe, considering that the tongue is kind of one piece of this upper. It's not something I worry about as much with knit uppers. So far, I've really gotten on with these kind of notched laces. It's something we're seeing more and more. I think this was one of the first shoes to do that, but now they are all the rage. I feel like I don't really think they're giving that much extra lockdown. They're not locking into each eyelet, but they are comfortable, they are nice, they're long enough. So all in all, no complaints with the laces. So the lockdown on the upper of this shoe is incredibly good. And I think that's matched by that heel counter. In it we have just a small bit of padding in the heel. It looks really weird and looks quite uncomfortable before you have run in it, but I can say, although it looks uncomfortable, it definitely felt very comfortable. My heel fit really nice in underneath it. I had no slippage, no blisters, no rubbing, no problems at all with that heel counter. It was the perfect amount of padding on what is an otherwise very minimalistic shoe upper. Overall, the upper of the shoe is incredibly good. It is both thin and lightweight while being sturdy and good quality and a really nice fit with great lockdown. Honestly, no real notes to improve the upper after my initial runs. On to the midsole of this shoe now, and that's probably the bit that most people are interested in. We have a humongous amount of Nike's Zoom X, their top of the line foam, ranging from 39mm in the heel to 34mm in the forefoot. To complement that bucket load of foam, we have a full length carbon plate and two quite large and visible Air Zoom pocket things. I was a bit nervous about the midsole of this shoe, having run in the Tempo Next Percent and really not liking it. I didn't know whether or not quite a similar midsole was going to be for me. However, I could say I'm absolutely blown away by the implementation of so many different technologies in the midsole of this shoe, because it works incredibly well and you kind of forget that everything is there. The Zoom X foam is incredibly squishy and it feels brilliant underfoot. It's so soft and so bouncy and just returns so much energy when compared to pretty much any other foam that I've tried. Even with that softness, it never feels unstable. It's a pretty wide shoe, and spoiler, the outsole's pretty good as well. And so you never feel like you're tipping and turning like you do in some other shoes with that really big stack height. This one just feels really comfortable the whole way through. I was very nervous about the Air Zoom units in the forefoot of the shoe. I didn't really know what they were going to add, what they were going to bring to this shoe. And maybe I'm still a little bit lost, but I do think they feel quite good. They really do make sure that you want to be landing on the forefoot of the shoe, to be hitting them along with that quite substantial amount of foam when compared to other shoes with a more significant drop. I think they feel quite bouncy, although maybe slightly more rigid than the actual foam itself. So, you know, good and bad things there. I do think they're a good inclusion in this shoe, especially for those longer distances where having a little bit more responsiveness in that forefoot definitely makes it a slightly more comfortable, slightly more nimble ride when compared to if this shoe simply had 34mm of that Zoom X stack in the forefront. And the plate in this sole is super stiff. If I try and give it a little bend right now, oh, it's probably one of the stiffest carbon plates in a shoe that I've ever tried. And I've tried the Adios Pro 2s and also another mystery carbon racing shoe from New Balance that I will be talking about very soon. But compared to those two, this has easily the stiffest carbon plate by far. However, it's not super present when you're running in it. You definitely kind of feel that snap more than other shoes, but I don't think it super dictates the way you run. I think that dictation is probably more due to the AirPods and the kind of structure of the shoe having quite a low stack drop. I think those things tend to dictate the way you run more than the carbon plate in this specific shoe. Maybe that's due to how soft the foam is, I don't know. And I'm sure that carbon plate helps with some of that energy return we feel from that foam, because the foam really just wants to push your hand away from it. And I'm sure that combined with that carbon plate, it really gives it some of the spring in the step that I found with this midsole, because it's super comfortable to run in. It almost makes running effortless, I must say. I don't really believe that shoes can make you faster. However, I've never felt so good and so fresh after or during hard races or workouts than in this shoe. So I think there's something to be said for this combination of bouncy foam, responsive but kind of bouncy AirPods and a carbon plate. Genuinely surprised that I really like the midsole of this shoe, but I'm blown away by it, and it's definitely one of my favourites as far as carbon racing shoes go. So finally, let's talk about the outsole of this shoe, and I think this shoe really was one of the first ones to define what a super shoe outsole looks like, because of course we have a good amount of rubber in the forefoot, no real rubber in the heel. We've got two kind of white patches on this colourway of the shoe that are kind of some sort of light rubber or a rubberized foam, I can't quite tell, but we still have a lot of exposed foam. And I think this is how a lot of super shoe companies are making those shoes now. But how does this one fare up among the ones that I've taken it so far? Well, I think it's incredibly good. I really, really like the kind of wavy pattern to the rubber on here, because I think it allows them to cut down some of the rubber while keeping it really nice and good traction. Although all of my running in this shoe has been on tarmac, I have been on a couple of small gravelly sections, and this forefoot absolutely chew up that gravel. There was absolutely no problems, no slippage, no worries at all. However, what I have noticed is that I've got a little bit of wear, especially on this exposed foam towards the heel, where a couple of bits of gravel or stones have just started to kind of take off some of that foam. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a shoe that I can be wearing very regularly, so I'm not really worried about that durability, and it's not in the main foam parts, but it's just something to be mindful of. If you know that you can't avoid heel striking, this might not be the best shoe for you, because this is the most kind of exposed part of the whole outsole, and if you are landing on it first all the time rather than kind of on those Air Zoom pods, I think you might see some wear that might limit the life of these shoes. I haven't had a chance to run in the wet in these shoes, but I really am not going to worry about it when it comes to it, just from the level of traction of that forefoot rubber. Finally, let's talk about the value proposition of this shoe, and I think that's where this offering from Nike really starts to fall apart, because brand new, these shoes are still around £260 full price, which is an inordinate amount of money to spend on a single pair of running shoes. There are 3 or 4 pairs of running shoes you could get for the same price that would be almost as good as this one, but allow you a much greater running rotation. Although these do go on sale quite regularly, I must say, I picked mine up for £150, but I've seen them as low as £140 or £135. And at that price, they become a much more tempting kind of value proposition, because then they are roughly the same price as things like the Saucony Endorphin Speed or the Puma Deviate Nitro, and they're significantly cheaper at that price point than some of the other carbon plated marathon or racing shoes, such as the Vaporfly from Nike, the Saucony Endorphin Pro, or even the Adidas Adios Pro 2s. Personally, I don't think they're ever worth it at full price. The only reason I picked up my pair was because I could get them for a discount. And with that discount, I think they are a pretty good deal. If you care about your performance in races, if you want to be beating your PBs, I think these shoes are definitely ones to help you do that. No, they are not going to make you the fastest runner in the world, but I do think they give you more energy return than other shoes, and I do think especially they make your legs feel better the longer into races you go. Like I said, I've never had my legs feeling so fresh at the end of a half marathon. But let me know what you think about these shoes in the comments down below. Have you been able to try them? Did you pick yourself up a pair? If so, do you think that they're a good value shoe? I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more shoe reviews or other triathlon and running related content, then please consider subscribing, as it really helps out the channel, and hit that like button to push this video right through that YouTube algorithm and share it with more running friends. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.